they invite the appraiser and indeed the intended user to feel that a reconciliation is not terribly important. The issue here is it's terribly important.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out once again with you. Thanks for joining me. Golly, man, I look at the numbers. We're nearing 1 million downloads here for the Appraiser Coach Podcast, and I love y'all. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening week after week. Listen to me drone on about who knows what. I just am grateful for each of you and your support of this program. Also, very grateful for the support of our sponsors who have every one of them, been with us from the very beginning. A la Mode, of course, is the software I've been using for over 2 decades. About almost 25 years I've been using A la Mode, and there's a reason for that. They still continue to give me the greatest value out there for my buck, and I appreciate them. A la Mode is the company, and you can find them at alamode.com or 800 A la Mode. Datamaster, of course, a great little company out of Utah, helping appraisers to save time in their quality of their report, to increase the quality. Datamasterusa.com is where you find them, datamasterusa.com, and of course, my good friends over at Working RE Magazine. Working RE, helping appraisers to be informed as to what is going on in their world. That is the appraisal world. Check them out. Go to workingre.com. Again, it's workingre.com. Well, folks, as you know, an ongoing series that we have here is called the Dear USPAP Instructor series. Now, Dear USPAP Instructor is where we have an amazing man on who answers your questions. And his name is Tim Andersen. Tim, I want to welcome you back to the program, man. Tim gets no per diem. He gets no pay for this, but yet he gives of his time and his energy and his thinking cap. And Tim, I just appreciate you being on week after week. Thank you.
Oh, Dustin, surely. And the reason I don't get a per diem is because I don't know what it means. But
well, we'll just skip over that because once you start asking me for that, I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, all right. We'll move on. Dustin, thank you. It's an honor to be with you. I appreciate it. Thank you very kindly.
Tim, of course, is a long time appraiser, both in the residential and commercial side, and been teaching USPAP classes for a very long time. And Tim, you've kind of moved into a different, let's call it the twilight of your life, where you're not actively appraising, but you're still very much involved in the appraisal world. Tell the listeners a little bit more about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'll be frank, Dustin, I got tired of writing appraisals. While I enjoyed parts of it, I didn't enjoy it as an entity. Whereas as an entirety, I had been consulting with other appraisers and found that was a lot more rewarding, and it wasn't nearly as hard. So
I assume the word, just to fill in the blank for the listeners, you cut out for a second, but I think the word was consultant, right?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. That's what happens when you have a wonderful internet connection. I had already been doing a lot of consulting and just basically transitioned from writing appraisals to consulting with other appraisals, which on occasion includes writing drafts. But
sure.
Typically, no. Somebody calls me up, says I got a problem with the state, or I want to avoid a problem with the state. What is it I can do? And so as a result, I work with appraisers one-on-one. I review their work, not from a standpoint of here's what you did wrong.
We get enough of that, right?
Yeah, try to throw you under the bus, but rather saying, okay, this part's good. This part needs work. And here's what I suggest you do on that. And as a result, it's what I call a friendly review, because it's confidential to me. It doesn't go anywhere. And then it's information that the appraiser can take and literally use starting the next day. So I find it a lot more rewarding to help my fellow appraisers than I find it to write appraisals. Yeah. And as I say, I liked a lot of it, but I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I got a whole lot of initials after my name. And I got real tired of people who I think got out of high school telling me I was screwing something up. And so I just got tired of it and moved into another facet of appraising. You've spoken. In fact, I think one of the most recent podcasts was diversifying your practice to stuff other than basic residential first mortgage appraisal. So I did. I diversified my practice into consulting, and not with people who are looking for value, but for appraisers who are looking to know how to appraise better and write better, clearer, more succinct reports.
Well, rather than focus on a specific question or questions, as the case may be, from our listenership today, I'd like to dive into a little bit more, not what you do, but what you see. In other words, as an appraiser, and I am an active appraiser, sometimes wish I wasn't, but most days I'm still okay with that. I haven't got to the point that I'm completely bored out of my mind with doing appraisals after 24 years, but I still enjoy it. But there are aspects of it that, let's just be honest, and I think all the listeners can probably feel a connection when I say there's some fear, some trepidation, some concern with appraisers. Whenever I send out a report, I see that for what it is. It's my opinion. It's I believe well supported, but it's also a liability. Once that appraisal is out there, then I take on an extra level of liability, in the sense that there's a fear that there will be on a small level revision requests. On a big level, that appraisal will make it into the hands of the state board, and then they're going to scrutinize that to their heart's content. And so as an appraiser, I want to feel better about my work. So I want to spend the first half of the program, Tim, with your permission, talking a little bit about what I can do and what listeners can do to make sure that we cover ourselves. And I know that you can never do it 100%. I know that you've said, it depends on if the state board, if it's a Tuesday, right? I mean, they make some strange decisions based on the mood, based on the situation, based on the case that came before them, yesterday. I don't know why they do what they do, but for the most part, I'd like to focus on some things that we can do to make sure that we don't have to live in fear of the mailbox, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's no reason to live in fear of the mailbox. The snakes and badgers and hungry rabid raccoons that live in the bottom of it won't bite you as long as you don't stick your hand in. It's perfectly fine.
Right. That's not the part of the mailbox I'm worried about. It's that state board seal on that envelope. That's what I'm worried
about. Dustin, in looking at the stuff I review, one of the areas that catches my eye is the use of boilerplate. Now, there's nothing wrong with boilerplate. It's a time saver. That's why we have boilerplate. The problem with boilerplate, when it becomes a replacement rather than a complement.
Okay.
For example, if an appraiser, if our listeners will go to their appraisal, pull one out of the file, go to an appraisal report, go to the pre-printed highest and best use. That's a great place to start. It explains what highest and best use is. It probably explains its components, but then it stops there. And under USPAP, there are 5 components of highest and best use. And I'm not going to rattle them off because I don't remember them, quite frankly. But because if I did, I probably would rattle them off. But the point is, highest and best use has got to cover those 5 items. And then when I say cover those 5 items, those are the 5 items that the appraiser has to analyze as part of arriving at a highest and best use conclusion. And then standard rule 2-2A12 is the other half of highest and best use. A lot of appraisers think it has only one half, and no, there are 2 parts to it. The second part is the appraiser must, somewhere in the report, provide the support and rationale he or she has for having arrived at that highest and best use conclusion.
Yeah.
Well, what happens is the appraiser will take a look at the subject, and it's a house in a residential subdivision, and it's residentially zoned, and it's surrounded by other houses, and nobody's tearing any houses down to build something else, etc. And they say, wow, that's the highest and best use. And yes, that is the highest and best use. Right. Most probably. But the problem is there is no support there is no summary of the support and rationale for the highest and best conclusion. And that's where the state gets upset. Not that the appraiser didn't do it, but that the appraiser didn't follow USPAP in doing it.
So it's not enough. It's not enough to come to the right conclusion when it comes to highest and best use. Yes, this is the highest and best use, or it's not the highest and best use. This is. You're saying, just like with anything else, it's one thing to make an adjustment, but it's a whole other thing to support that adjustment.
Well, when your kids were little, and you said they couldn't do something, and they said, "Well, you could say because I'm the dad. That's why."
Right. Yeah.
That sufficed. Okay, right. But as they got older, that didn't work. Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't work with appraisals.
Okay.
We can't say, well, that's the highest and best use because I'm the appraiser, damn it, and I say so. And we'd like to think that, but no, we have to say, this is my conclusion as to highest and best use, and here are the 3, 4, 12, 87 supporting reasons why I arrived at that conclusion. That's the important part. It goes back to high school algebra. Show your math. I mean, the answers to half the questions are in the back of the book. Okay.
Right.
But your teacher didn't care whether you got the answer right. Your teacher cared about how you got the answer. And that's basically what USPAP says. Okay, you gave us your answer. Thank you very much. How did you get there? And when the appraiser goes, or the appraiser says, well, it's based on my 30 years experience.
Right. Well, that's always a good one.
Yeah, that carries a lot of water. Then the state says, okay, appraiser, you got a problem. Mm-hmm. And pull out your checkbook. And
I want to go ahead.
No, I was done meandering about whatever I was meandering about.
I just want to emphasize what a great service you provide, Tim. And one of the things that you do, Tim, is for a fee, you will review a handful of reports from appraisers, and you will help them to make sure that they cross the T's and dot the I's a little bit better. You've done this service for me, Tim. And the reason I bring it up now is I remember probably the biggest, and Nick, you came back with a lot of things that I could change, and I implemented some, and let's be honest, I didn't implement all of them. And it's one of the things I want to talk to you about as to why I didn't implement all of them. But to circle back on highest best use, that definitely was the biggest aha moment for me in working with you. As a service you provided to me, you went through my reports, and I actually felt pretty good about the highest best use statement that I had in the report. And I felt like when I needed to, a lot of times that was a boilerplate, but when I needed to, I changed it and I made it more specific depending on what I was dealing with. But you came back and said, let me show you a better way of doing this. And ever since then, I've slept a little bit better at night, knowing that my highest best use statement and the process that I go through is better than it was before. So thank you, Tim.
Oh, Dustin, surely it's my honor. Thank you.
Now, let me talk, not to get too far derailed, but I promised to circle back to an issue is, one of the things we have to deal with as appraisers, and this is a program where we're just going to speak bluntly, right? We're going to be very real with our listeners. And one of the things that we deal with as appraisers is this balance between efficiency and quality. And let's be honest, you've told me this, I don't remember if it was on the air or off the air, but if an appraiser did absolutely everything that he possibly could do to make sure that everything is supported and everything is done properly in an appraisal, it would probably take him a week to write one appraisal. We don't have a week to write one appraisal. On the other hand, you recently came out with a podcast episode regarding what you should not say, and I listened to that one over the weekend. And one of the things that you talked about, Tim, was you should never say, well, the fee wasn't high enough for me to justify, going into that much detail. So there has to be this balance between, okay, I've got to run a business, right? But I also want to put out a high quality report. Talk to me, Tim, about how an appraiser deals with that dichotomy, because sometimes it feels like there's such a chasm between those two that it can be challenging.
Dustin, if we were looking at single appraisals and single fees, there would be a chasm, and it would most likely be an unchallengeable chasm. So you mentioned earlier the service I provide, and I said that you get my reports back, and it's stuff you can literally use for the rest of your career if you choose to.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is okay, we're going to lose money on some appraisals and some we're going to make money on. Let's face it, that's just what happens. But the appraiser can say, okay, I need to make this change. All right, so for the next 2 appraisals, making this change, I'm not going to make any money. From this point forward, I've changed my boilerplate, or I know what to add, or whatever. And then at that point, that's where the economies of scale kick in.
Right.
And maybe it's going to cost you $1,500 to make a change. Okay, so for the first 2 or 3 appraisals, you lose money. But then from that point forward, you're not. Because you know what to change, you know when to change it, you know how to change it, and you know why you changed it. So again, highest and best use. It's a house in a residential neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. Okay, once you've written that out 2 or 3 times and you know what to write, or indeed you've got the boilerplate that you can just slip in the report, then you're making some money. But the first couple of times you can do it, no, you're probably going to lose money on those assignments. But then, most appraisers don't do 10 assignments a year. Most appraisers may do a couple of 100 or 300 assignments a year, depending on where you are and your state of technology and whether you've got associates or not, et cetera. So again, once you've instituted the changes, they're made. And you're going to continue to make money on an appraisal. What happens is the appraiser will get into, I'm going to use the word rut. I'm not sure that's the right word, but an appraiser will get to the point where it's the same. Literally, an appraisal becomes a fill in the box exercise,
sure.
Which is, there's nothing terribly wrong with that. But then we get the assignment where we have to start thinking outside that box. And we don't. And that's the one we get in trouble on. And so when you get the request, when you get that email with a request, you gotta say, well, okay, this is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and blah 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 blah. And typically for those we charge whatever it is we typically charge. But let's face it, you can have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Star Valley and a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Jackson Hole. And there's going to be a different fee because each has a different challenge.
Right.
Or then you're going to have the house up in Jackson Hole built by the Hollywood money by somebody who's got a whole lot more money than brains. And they just build and build and build and build and build because they got the money to do that, when it doesn't mean anything relative to value. And that's going to be a real challenging one. So for that one, it would be my advice on the fee to screw them blind. Because it's going to be a major challenge for you, and you're not going to make that up in economies of scale, because you're not going to appraise $50-10 million houses every year.
Yeah, good point. We're talking with Tim Andersen. He is the appraiser's advocate out of Florida. Appraiser, USPAP instructor, MAI advocate for appraisers. He helps to improve our lives. When we get back, Tim, I want to talk more about what we can do to, I'm not going to say bulletproof, but to at least beef up our report writing, and what to do when that letter comes, which, throughout our career it may. I want to pause here and remind everybody that we are sponsored by 3 great companies. One of them, of course, is Working RE. Love the guys over at Working RE, great friends of mine, and people who pride themselves on making sure that they are up on what's going on. Folks, when you hear about news in the appraisal world, I'm pretty confident that most of the time it comes from Working RE. They are on top of what's going on, even further down the road than a lot of us when it comes to what's going on in our profession. Folks, if you are wanting to know what's going on in the appraisal world and being entertained in the process, check out Working RE. They've got a free blog that you can sign up just by putting your email in. It's workingre.com is where you go. One more time, workingre.com. If you're looking at saving time and did I say the word and? Improving the quality of your report at the same time. Can you do that? You can do that, folks. Datamasterusa.com is where you go. This is an opportunity for you to avoid human error, because Datamaster takes the actual data from your source. Say it's the county records, say it's the MLS, and will input it into your report without you having to touch, well, other than just one button. Click, and it puts it in. It's amazing. Yes, you're still in charge of making sure that data is correct. Yes, you still need to double check everything, but you're not going to make the fat finger mistake that I've made many, many times, putting data in by human error. Folks, Data Master is not only saving you time, it is increasing the quality of your report. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. Finally, we're sponsored by Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the software that I have been using for a couple of decades, and I will continue to do so as long as they continue to provide me the value that they have for many, many years. They have the tools such as mobile, such as the smart adjuster, such as the side-by-side view, such as the peer review, the integrated plugins for AI and uploading through many, many different portals. Folks, I'm telling you, in the end, when you look at the cost of Alamode versus the value, it is a no-brainer. Alamode.com, 800 Alamode. And we're back. We're talking with Mr. Tim Andersen. Typically, we take a question or two from the listeners, but I wanted to take a little bit of a diversion today, Tim, and just talk in general about how we can keep the quality of our report high, how we can keep the state board off our backs. But give us, you talk about boilerplate, give us one or two other things that you see commonly as you deal with appraisers and their challenges before the state board that if you had given some preventative measures and they had taken you seriously, would have avoided such a thing.
Dustin, the standard rule 1-6A and B is the reconciliation standard. And unfortunately, Fannie Mae has decided that it doesn't merit a lot of space on the appraisal form. Okay, it's Fannie Mae's form. They can design it any way they want to. But by omitting sufficient space for the appraiser to properly reconcile the approaches and the quality, quantity of data, etc., they invite the appraiser and indeed the intended user to feel that a reconciliation is not terribly important. The issue here is it's terribly important, and it gives the appraiser the opportunity to pick up his or her flag and wave it in the breeze and say, look what a wonderful job I did. For example, 1-6A basically says that you will reconcile the quality and quantity of the data in the approaches. Well, let's face it, most of us use the sales comparison approach. Occasionally we get into the cost approach, and almost never do we get into the income approach. And well, I think that's an issue. We're not going to talk about it here. But the point is, an appraiser will say, I didn't use the cost approach because the market doesn't use it. I would question that. What else does the market use? You say the sales comparison approach? Yes, but the cost and the sales comparison approach measure the same things. The value of the underlying site and the contributory value of the improvements. And how can you adjust for depreciation differences if you don't know what the subject's depreciation is? You gotta extract it somehow, and then the cost approach is usually where that happens. Okay, so if you're not going to use the cost approach, that's your choice. That's part of the scope of work.
Sure.
But don't say it's because don't say you didn't use it because the market doesn't recognize it, unless you got a survey in your work file showing the market doesn't recognize it. To make that statement is misleading.
Survey of
and
one.
Believe me, I'm sorry.
Survey of one. Just kidding.
Well, then that opens your statistical analyses to question. But if you say the market doesn't recognize it, then the state has every right to look in your work file and say, okay, how did you arrive at that conclusion?
Right.
And it isn't, because that's what I've said in all my reports for the last 20 years. That doesn't carry any weight. And then standard rule 1-6B basically says, okay, talk about the quality and quality of the data you used. Well, maybe you use the sales comparison approach, but the data are rotten. And it's perfectly okay to say, I use the sales comparison approach, but the data are rotten, but it's all I got.
Yeah.
And let's face it, there aren't a whole lot of sales of $10 million houses Well, there may be a whole lot of sales of $10 million houses in Jackson Hole, but typically there aren't a whole lot of sales of $10 million houses. And then because they are custom designed and they are custom built and they are custom finished, there's almost nothing comparable from one to the other. So you got to go with what you got.
Yeah.
You either got to play the cards you're dealt, ask for new cards, or fold. Those are basically all you can do. So you say, I used the sales comparison approach, but it really wasn't very good. And I went to the cost approach. I got great cost. But let's face it, this was a cost don't really mean anything. Mm-hmm. And then I looked at the income approach, and what is a $10 million house rent for? And so as a result, I came up with a number. But, let's face it, because it's a custom built house, and there aren't that many people on the planet who can afford a $10 million house. I'm 70% happy with the number and 30% not, but it's the best I could do with the data I had.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, this is good advice. Tim is talking to us, of course, about boilerplate. Nothing wrong with boilerplate, but be careful. Reconciliation, make sure that we're actually doing it and describing what it is that we're doing. Tim, in the few minutes that we have remaining, talk to us about where do we go when that, if, I'm going to be positive, if that letter, that ominous letter ever comes to our mailbox from the state and they say, hey, we're investigating this file or these files, we need your work file. What's an appraiser to do at that point?
Well, at that point, the first thing you do is you get in touch with the E&O people. If nothing else, just to let them know. Now, is your E&O rate going to go up? No. From that alone, no, it will not go up. But they'll say, okay, thanks. We appreciate you keeping us posted. And here are a list of administrative law attorneys in your local area. And you probably want to get with one. Okay, you should. Because let's face it, once the state gets a hold of it, it's really not an appraisal issue anymore. Now it's a legal issue. And appraisers aren't attorneys. Appraisers are not trained to operate in that arena. Appraisers don't know what to say. In a recent podcast, I went through things you don't say. And one of the things you don't say is, well, I didn't mean to do anything wrong. Because that just admits you did something wrong. Yeah. But yet I find that when appraisers write their own response letters, that's one of the things they say. And an attorney or a USPAP consultant will say, thank you, dear state, for your kind letter. I deny everything in it and look forward to the opportunity to meet with you and the investigator and clear this thing up. And that's all you say. Yeah. Because you say, as they say in the TV shows, anything you say can and will be used against you. And it will be. And the last place you want to find yourself is staring at the drive shaft of that bus as it drives over you. So that's why you get in touch with an attorney. That's why you get in touch with a USPAP instructor. So your attorney has someone to consult with on USPAP. That's why you might want to send your report out for a formal, candid review. Because the reviewer may come back and say, Dustin, bless your heart, start writing checks. That may be the quickest way to end this problem. Well, or say, Dustin, no, this looks fine. I don't see any problem with this. I don't think the state's got anything. And then your attorney has got something to fight with.
Yeah. Well, and talk to me, Tim, as we close up here. I think most people understand, okay, contacting the check. I get that. Contacting a lawyer, okay. I mean, I can see the purpose of that, but, God, that's going to be expensive. Talk to me more, though, about what you do and why an appraiser would say, okay, I've got that letter. I've got something to deal with here. I'm going to call Tim. When you get that call, what's the purpose? What do you do to help an appraiser in that situation?
Well, first thing I say, have you gotten in touch with an attorney? Have you gotten in touch with people? Right. Okay. Because it's gotten to that point now. And if they say, well, no, I haven't, I say, well, okay, you should.
Let's start
what do you want me to do? And then they say, well, I need help responding to the letter. Okay, send me all the stuff that the state sent you. I'll go over it. I will draft a letter for you. And then you can use my draft, or you can edit my draft, or you can throw my draft out and do whatever it is you want to. But what you're doing is you're saying, look, I can't fight this battle alone. This is too big, and I've got too many other things to worry about. Let me turn it over to someone who can help me.
Yeah.
And then, just as you have mentioned, the law of delegation, what you're doing is you're delegating that responsibility to someone who has a clue what they're doing. Now, does that relieve you of the responsibility? No. You still got to read the letter. You still got to sign it. You're still responsible for it to the state. But at least you've offloaded part of the job to someone who knows what they're doing, someone who knows the questions that are going to come in, someone who knows how to help answer them. And I'm not the only person who does this. There are a whole lot of people throughout the United States that do it. And it's got nothing to do with where we live, because we're not coming up with a value conclusion.
Right.
We can sit in our home states and advise people in other states, which is what I do literally every week.
Right.
So especially this time of year, as winter sets in, I'm more than happy to sit here in Florida and advise people in Michigan and Minnesota and Wisconsin and North Dakota. Just thrilled to death to do that.
I'm sure you are. Tim, how do people get a hold of you?
My email address, Dustin, is tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. And my website is theappraisersadvocate.com.
And you have a podcast as well.
I do podcasts, and they are on my website at theappraisersadvocate.com/podcasts.
And they're wonderful.
And then, as you well know, we do YouTube videos also, as you've been on them. And that's at the YouTube, The Appraiser's Advocate.
Pretty easy to find them, folks. The Appraiser's Advocate, Tim Andersen. Once again, my hat's off. Great information from a great guy. Thanks for taking time, and we'll catch you next time, my friend.
Oh, Dustin, it's an honor. Thank you. My best to you, your family, all the listeners, and all their families.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.